Seeking the wise.
With Aaron and Alexander discussing the just philosophy.
Covering self-development, emotional processing, conscious relationships, and 5 levels of overall wellness.
Welcome to the Wise podcast. Here in the virtual studio with me is the one and only Alexander.
So good to be here with everybody, and so good to reconnect with Aaron here, and we're looking forward to getting into a good conversation and seeing where it leads us today.
Yeah, people out there are probably thinking, wow, we sound a lot better. We're using some new software here to record. It does sound a lot better. And we're doing, I guess, a new format. We're going to just having a casual conversation, no pressure to teach anybody anything, and just hoping that people can learn through our, just our casual conversations. So Alexander and I haven't really chatted in a couple weeks. And, I went and had a vacation and a work thing up north, and I've had a lot of stuff go on. And so you guys are going to be able to see kind of what our personal conversations sound like, as we'll be kind of sharing what's been going on in our lives. But obviously most of the stuff that we talk about applies to the work anyway, as we live our lives intentionally and, living the just philosophy as a life philosophy. So nothing really changes from when we're on air to our lives. And that's the glorious thing about living and exemplifying, this philosophy.
Yes, and something different that we're doing is normally we'll just chat to kind of catch up on things for 30 or 45 minutes before we get into recording the podcast. But today we have done very little discussion, and we're just kind of going in, diving into the deep end, so to say. And this is, like Aaron was saying, this is what we do anyway. These are the kind of conversations we have. We're just kind of letting you in the green room, so to say, with today's episode. Yeah.
So Alexander is chilling in his new studio there that he's worked very hard on the last 7 months. And I don't know if you're gonna put a video out there to show everybody at some point. I know you sent me one, but I wasn't sure if that was for everybody or if that was just for the VIPs.
Yeah, probably a VIP at this point, but yeah, I'll be releasing the Wise and Just Philosophy studio that's been upfitting for about 7 months now, and got everything about 96% complete. And it feels so good to be in here sharing with everybody. So let's get into it.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a little weird because we're used to addressing the audience as the audience, but I think the challenge here is going to be just having a conversation like we were, and pretend that the audience doesn't exist. And I think that's just being honest here. It's going to be a challenge because I know I always feel like I have to present myself in a professional way when we're on air or when I'm representing the podcast or anything like that. And so it's almost like I have I don't want to say I have 2 personalities, but I have a more professional Aaron that I'd step into with a more professional voice and all that to I don't even know what it is. It's just something. So I need to this hopefully will help me just kind of let go of that so I can be myself at all times.
Yes, and this is an adjustment for both of us, but we are going to be just a little bit more casual and relaxed in the way we're speaking, and just hopefully continue to connect with people in different ways, in different formats, and see what people are resonating with.
Yeah, and I hope people out there don't think that we have schizophrenia or something because we keep changing the formats. But I think it's important that we try to be creative with ourselves, express our own creativity in doing this podcast, but also, again, like you mentioned, trying to reach people in different ways. We've done the Inward Journey story series where we were very creative in writing and doing the sound effects, and then we reflected upon that, and it was like a indirect way of talking about the work. We've discussed our own experiences and kind of how we've used the just philosophy. We've done a more intentional teaching sort of podcast type episodes, and now we're just kind of going with a casual conversation and see if people resonate with it or not. So can't fault us for trying all different things, and we'll continue to do that.
Yes, because this is a a creative philosophy, and the way that I approach life just in general is to not just be repetitious in everything that we do, that you can change a perspective or change a small action and it can change the whole experience. So this has been fun for me, and I believe for Aaron as well. And we have done these different platforms and presented it in different ways. And that's what also keeps it fresh and new for us. And we've taken a break from doing sessions together like this. And so this is just a great revisit into the old way of how we originally kind of saw this, over 7 years ago. And but like he was saying, we've been a little bit more from a teaching standpoint, or I certainly have. And in this, it's more of a casual sharing. There's still going to be, of course, teaching in it, but we want it to be more just like how we would have a conversation if we were at a social event.
Yeah. So we can first get into something that I reached out to you. It was like 4 weeks ago before I went on my trip. I had this, it was like the first time that I consciously realized that I actually absorbed a lot of energy in one scenario. In the human design, I am completely open in the emotional center. And I've often said that when hearing stories of other people being empaths and hearing how they like take on other people's energies, like if they go to a store or you can go to a concert or something like that, I've never really felt like I've taken on a lot of that.
Mhm.
But now I'm realizing maybe I just wasn't tapped into feeling or experiencing that, or maybe I wasn't grounded when in being in those scenarios. So I wasn't like starting off with like nothing and
Mhm.
then being able to realize that, oh, this isn't mine. So I had bowling on a Thursday night and there was like several I don't know if there was like a full moon or something, but there were so many things that happened that night that were just really heavy. First, we got there and the guy that we were playing against, his team wasn't there yet and he was confused on what time we started. The league starts at 6:30 and everybody was told that, but practice starts at 6:20 and that's where the confusion came in because he thought, okay, it starts at if somebody says it starts at 6:30, then practice should start at 6:30. So his team like didn't know, and this was like the second or third week. I don't want to say it was like the third week. Third week. So I feel like he should have known, after going three
Right.
or 4 weeks or whatever it was. But his team wasn't there, so he was freaking out and he was kind of like chirping, complaining to the people at the front desk because it's a very small bowling alley, so everything is like within earshot. It's only 12 lanes. So he was, kind of saying, well, it should start at 6:30 if it's starting, and so I kind of just reminded him, hey, if you were here for the initial meeting, we discussed all that there. I don't think he was. So, there's the cost of not being at the meeting.
Mhm.
You you maybe you don't know what time it starts or something. Um, but anyway, I didn't say it in like a mean way or condescending way. I was just being like, oh yeah, no, we discussed this in the meeting and this is what time, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, that's all the contact I kinda had with him at that. I just let him do his thing, I backed up, and so during that first 10 minutes, we practice, everybody just takes a shot. Usually, it doesn't reset after the first shot. Some alleys, they do because it's just like you just get one shot and you walk away. It's kinda just for warming up your arm or whatever. But in our alley, you get a full 2 shots. So people, take the full 2 shots, and there's enough time for everybody to get some shots in. And he was going around asking everybody, or maybe it wasn't even an asking. It was like, "Oh, you're not gonna shoot that second shot, are you?" Like, he was trying to jump in front of people to get more practice. Uh, so that was a little it was a little, like, invasive, I felt
Mhm.
like, his energy, like, he was kind of putting it off as, like, a joke, but he was just kinda, like, pushing and trying to get his way in there to get more shots. And then, his team eventually came in, and they actually gave us some extra practice, so, my whole team kinda stepped back and let them go for the extra 5 plus minutes, so it wasn't that big of a deal. So then we get started, and, like, 3 frames in, the lanes break, and so he's getting frustrated. And then people do that at our alley. Our alley is like a back of the woods, type of thing, and stuff breaks. And so it's a joke, but sometimes that negativity, like we talked about in, I think it was the recent podcast in the complete conversation, I asked you about the words that we use and how we talk about things, and you mentioned we're always building up or tearing down.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes the joking about the lanes is like, it doesn't feel energetically heavy, but sometimes it gets annoying, and it's just like everybody's always complaining about it.
Sure.
So like, it gets repetitive
This
every
is
so often.
and
So
this
the
is
lane,
for people like, apologies for cutting you off, but I wanted to say that this is just a general feeling of frustration and the way that
yeah.
frustration builds over time, and it can get heavy just no matter what our listeners are dealing with. This is hopefully they can relate. Yeah.
Yeah, and so he was frustrated, and then I was standing next to my teammate, and he was getting frustrated over the lanes, and I was just like, yeah, just kind of agreeing, but not feeding it, and just standing back and reminding myself to not get into that energy because I was experiencing it from two other people. So it put me in a situation where I could not just like subconsciously get brought into that. But sometimes I am the one complaining about the lanes. So, and sometimes it's just to make conversation with people, to be honest. That happens. Uh but I mean it took a while. The lanes got fixed, and um everybody started bowling. But then on our lanes, on the sensor for the lanes to know what pins are left if you don't get a strike is kind of, it like messes up. So you have to constantly be watching the score and then fix the score as you go. And so like I recently learned how to do all that. So I was on top of it, fixing it. But it was just another thing for people to complain about.
Mm-hmm.
So we go on. I want to say we maybe made it like one game, and then one of my teammates, because it's a team of 4, and I'm with my buddy Steve, and his son is like 20, and his friend, they're both like around the age 20ish, maybe a little older, and they're new to bowling. So one of the kids, I call them kids, but they're in their 20s.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you know you're
Right.
old. I made it to old age. I used to resonate, I think I was still a kid, but now I guess I'm not. But he would throw the ball, and then because we were on the last lane all the way to the right, he would just like walk off to the side instead of staying on the lane, because there's like a little drop off, and then there's a path to go to the back of the alley. So he would kind of walk off, and so the guy who was initially frustrated on the other team started saying that spare didn't count because he walked off, and because that was a violation of the rules. Well, in our league, it's non-sanctioned, so you really don't have to go by the official USB A or C rules, whatever it is, because it's unsanctioned. So the score doesn't count towards anything. It's just like a fun league. You consider it as like a fun summer league. So I didn't know if that was a rule violation or not, or because I didn't know. So I went up to the front desk and I asked the manager there, and I said, "Hey, is that a violation of the rules?" And he's like, "Nah, this is a non-sanctioned league. It's not a big deal." And but I listened to the guy, and I was like, you have a point, because you can't foul, you can't put your foot over the line.
Mm-hmm.
But if he's going off to the side and then going essentially across like the same line, if it extended, then I could see that maybe being a foul. But while all that was happening, while I was trying to figure that out, Steve, my buddy, he saw the guy, because you're not allowed to touch the surface of the ball as soon as the game starts. Because now they have these little sanding pads that you can touch up the surface. You can make the ball do different things on the fly. But because it's not sanctioned, you can do whatever you want with the ball.
Right.
But anyway, Steve kind of got upset, and he was like, "Hey, you know, you shouldn't be doing this and complaining about this." And so, I know, anyway, it ended up being like a very tense situation where people were getting angry at each other. And I found myself trying to become the mediator of it
Mm-hmm.
all, because I was grounded. And I could understand that guy's complaint of that kid going across the line. And I did pull him aside and say, hey, let's not do that, because I can kind of see how it could be a violation. But, this time we're just going to allow him to keep the spare, whatever it was. But, going forward, even though that guy eventually was like, hey, it's okay. It's fine if he does it. I was like, no, let's just not do that, because I could see his point.
Mhm.
But he's also allowed to touch the surface of his balls. So trying not to make this a long-winded conversation. But anyway, just things got heated, and it kept being kind of like yippy between my buddy and the guy that we were bowling against. And I tried to just kind of like be more friendly to this guy, to like kind of allow him to relax more, because
Mhm.
I don't like confrontation.
Right.
So,
The 3-5
but
of the human design,
yeah,
3-5.
but it wasn't just that. Like, I don't want that kind of energy around. And when I feel like it's silly, when I can see that people are just wrapped up in emotion and they're not seeing things clearly, I try to like bring like a more joking, grounding energy to help people relax. And so the final part of all of this was one of the guys up at the front desk. Every bowling day, we have these things called strike tickets, where people buy like a lotto ticket thing, and if your number gets called, you get one chance to bowl a strike, and if you hit a strike, then you get the pot,
Mm.
and if you don't, it carries over. So they apparently needed somebody to announce, the ticket that they pulled. So they came over to our lane, because we're kind of right in front of the front desk, and they asked, "Hey, does anybody want to do it?" And I was like, "Well, I'll do it, because I'm comfortable, and I want to like intentionally get better talking in front of people." And there's a pretty good crowd. There's like 40 people there. So I was like, "Okay, I'll do it." So I walked up to the front desk, and I know that you usually look to make sure nobody's bowling, because you don't want to suddenly come on and mess up somebody who's going up the bowl. And I looked, I didn't see anybody, and then I started talking, and I turned my back to everybody as I was getting like the ticket that they were pulling, and I started announcing it and commentating and trying to add humor to it all. Uh, to represent my brand well, 'cause I get along with everybody there, and I'm allowed to be myself, and so everybody knows me, that I joke around with everybody. So, I guess what happened was, this woman was actually bowling while I was doing it, but I think when I looked, she was behind one of the beams that come down, 'cause I did not see anybody. And I guess when I started talking, she bowled, and she was going for like a 200 game or something like that, and she ended up getting a 7-10 split, which is just what happened. I don't know. So after I think it was toward the end that I was announcing it, she started yelling at me,
Mm.
like in front of everybody, and I saw the microphone, because I was walking around with it, and she started like yelling at me, and she does this often, where she'll talk like loud. She's a very loud talker, but sometimes it's not like she's mad, and I don't know how she's directing it or why she's directing it. But I got closer to her, and she started saying that, explaining that I started talking while she was bowling, and she usually does the announcing,
Mm.
which is uh but anyway, I kind of just didn't say anything back, and I kinda just gave the mic back and was quiet, because I didn't really understand what was happening. I didn't really understand why she was mad at me, or why it was directed to me, because I felt like it was just a misunderstanding.
Right.
Wasn't she didn't know what was going on. So anyway, I gave the mic back after it was all done, and I walked back, and I started bowling, and, she eventually came back to me probably about a half a game later and apologized, and said that she didn't know what happened, and that the people at the desk kind of jumped the gun, because they were young kids, and they didn't know when to do it and how to do it. And so she understood that I was just invited to do it, and I just said yes, and that it was just a consequence of that. And then she was like, "I'm really mad at this kid." So it was like she had to like focus
Mm.
all of her attention on this one kid, and I felt bad for him. I'm like, man, no, I don't know if he deserves that. I think it was just a misunderstanding. But I feel like she's had a lot of anger directed towards me, since I was friends with her ex before they broke up. Um, I feel like maybe there's something that I need to communicate with her about that I'm on, because I wanted them. Has a weird thing to say. I wanted them to break up, because I could see how unhappy they were,
Mhm.
and I just thought it was best for both of them. I wasn't, like, trying to break them up, but but I was in support of her doing it when she wanted to, and then, now he's moved away, they've broken up, she's found somebody new, and they're really happy, but I feel like all of a sudden, there's now a space for all of her anger to come out, and a lot of it is directed at me.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm around, it just comes out. It may not be, like, at me, but it's towards me,
Mhm.
and, so I'm thinking maybe I just need to pull her aside and say, "Hey, just let's get on the same page here." I feel like that might be, something. But anyway, that's the story. Well, as soon as I left the alley, I just like, I went in, I was grounded, I felt grounded pretty much the whole night, but when I left, I my solar plexus was just hurting, and even now, just, like, breathing now, I can feel it after revisiting all that because it was a lot of heavy, heavy, heavy energy, and I went through a lot, and so that was like, it was just the first time that I could ever remember feeling grounded and then being in a situation where after I left, I knew all of this was not mine because I felt like I stayed pretty grounded throughout the whole thing.
Mhm.
And I did not get sucked into any emotional reactions. I didn't get sucked into any side chatter of negativity. I tried to be the mediator and help people get grounded, and then I was left with a lot of the energetic baggage when I got home, and so, I took a shower, I felt like that some of that helped, but, the next day I felt okay, so I think, a good night's sleep helps to take off some of that, but so my theory of my mental that I have some mental, superpowers of that help prevent me from taking on people's stuff wasn't 100%, but anyway, I'm interested to hear what you say about it all and maybe some strategies that I could have used the next time I'm in this situation or I find myself, being around people who have, like, a lot of heavy energy.
Yeah, I mean, this, I feel like this is very common for a lot of empathic people, and something that I've noticed in all these years of working with people and studying it myself on myself is that people become more aware at different stages of their life of the subtle energy field. And for some people, it's a trauma that happens, and that was my experience. Is that I never really felt. Now, Aaron and I are designed differently. I have the emotional center in the human design activated, and he doesn't. And normally, when it's not activated, that shows up white on the chart, on the human design chart. And it normally means that you are empathic. And what that means is you can absorb easily energies from your environment. Now, this is very similar to when people have told me before that they don't believe in things like Mercury retrograde or full moon because they haven't had a direct experience. And see, I don't agree that they haven't necessarily had a direct experience. They just weren't aware of the experience. And now I happen to know that Aaron has worked on, the subtle energy now for at least 7 years, looking at it, experimenting with it and that type of thing. So your sensitivity or awareness, I think, has grown over this time. But one of the main things that I want to point out here is that, like, I've been around you in a fair amount of social situations, and you're normally really good about being that neutral person to where very little is directed straight at you. And you're a great uh, mediator type person to where many times you're not looking for the right or wrong in two people's conversations. You can enjoy both views or multiple views at the same time. But in this situation, see, the energy was directed directly at you. And see, this brings in approval issues and authority issues. And you didn't when it was directed directly towards you, you said you really didn't reply back. You just kind of gave the microphone to the bowling alley and I guess maybe went into maybe some reflection on it or something like that. And so you didn't get to make a stand for yourself, so to say. And I think that's good that you didn't go into justification. But see, anytime we don't go into explaining, and we have to be very careful not to go into justifying, but when we don't feel like we get to explain our role in something, there's an incompletion that's happening there. And so I agree that maybe it will be good for you to pull this person to the side and have a little discussion with her, because she may be holding a grudge because for X and you being friends, and she may or may not be aware of that. So, see, many times people direct things at people and they're not even aware of that chip that's on their shoulder and that type of thing. So, there's multiple things that is happening here. One is your energetic awareness. Two is that it was directed straight at you. And then the third is that you didn't really feel like you did anything wrong. It was just a misunderstanding, but you didn't get to vocalize that. And that's important for you because you have the throat chakra activated. So I want to pause here and just get a little bit of input from you with those three things before I continue.
Yeah, I feel like that's all pretty accurate. I do feel that a lot. If somebody judges me and I feel like it's wrong, if I don't get a chance to explain myself, then I do kind of feel like that incompletion of energy. Like I feel like I can feel it
Yes.
on the energetic plane, that I'm not able to complete that circuit or whatever it is. And yeah, when that was directed at me, the whole did I do something wrong, that shame, that judgment came in, and the dislike of conflict too all plays a major role in that, because I'm not going to give it back to her. Well, even if I didn't have a fear of conflict, I probably wouldn't have engaged either, because she's clearly in an emotional reaction and not saying things clearly, and nothing I say in that moment is going to change anything.
Yes, and see, this is the beauty of releasing energy when no one's around, speaking to the wind, the sky, the trees, to Mother Earth. But see, once we have a thought, and yes, it was a yearning to complete this energy, but you didn't complete it because it was a judgment cast, and then there was no explanation that you gave. So see, a thought creates energy. And when we don't have a way to get that energy out, that's what I see creates anxiety, creates heaviness, like you said, in the chest. You talked about the solar plexus, which is just below the rib cage. And see, that's around the balance between willpower and trust. And that kind of leaves a person in a quandary when they don't respond because they're attempting to trust that, well, this will just work out. But then the willpower comes in and says, but if you gave them more information, they may understand this.
Yeah.
So, see, lack of expression. And we talk so much about properly expressing our energy on this podcast and through the philosophy. And that is what I see that possibly next time, like you were talking about, pointers to take is to know that if you have a thought, we need to release that thought verbally, but we don't always need to release it around the person or the people or the situation that's involved. We need to just release it. So maybe on the drive home, you could have had that conversation and gave your take on it to get that energy out. And that's what I feel like maybe you carried the heaviness throughout that evening and maybe a little bit even into the next day. But see, I think this is great to see that this energetic awareness is like a graduation, so to say, which brings more responsibility. Because once we see that sensitivity, see, we want to learn to manage that so that we don't continuously fall into that pattern of carrying this energy around. So basically, she just dumped her emotional stuff on you and you took it and absorbed it without, I don't like using the word defending, but without explaining. And so that was like almost like you holding on to that energy. And see, she probably felt better because many times people that are emotionally expressive, they feel better when they get it off their chest. And then if there's no feedback, then they don't have to deal with, well, am I going to take this energy back, or am I just going to give that energy to him or that person? And so lots of empaths are passive. And I agree. And there's been many teachings through this podcast about, conflict resolution very rarely happens face to face. It's separately between two individuals. And we need to speak our truths without getting into a debate or an argument. And this is the process of why releasing what you thought or what you felt like you needed to express but didn't get a chance to is a very powerful part of emotional processing.
So I did. I mean, I always, when I have something on my mind, I always express it out loud to myself. When I'm, because I live alone, so I'm always alone, and I have a chance to do that without it being put on somebody else, or like in the shower too. I'll just release it. The water helps to wash it away. So,
Beautiful.
so I did do that, but at that point, the damage was already done. I already was holding on to that in my chest. So, are there any strategies or anything I could have done better? I mean, I guess, yeah, like what could I've like in the most conscious version of me, how would I or how could I have handled that? Or what do I need to learn throughout time to handle that optimally? The same scenario, but not take on that baggage.
Yeah, I think the first thing is the sooner you can have that release, the better. So if you can remove yourself and go to a restroom, or just say you need to go take a break and go outside and go for a little walk, and you express that at that time. Sometimes the longer we carry it, then the harder it is to just release from an energetic standpoint. So that would be my first thing, is that anytime somebody feels this type of pressure or taking on energies, to work to remove yourself as soon as possible and have that vocal expression come, I think would be helpful. The next thing is, this is where it's important to remember how we play roles for different people, and that friction or emotional challenges or reactions can't exist if friction isn't around. So again, when we recognize that we're playing a role and somebody is emotionally charged, we can, in that moment, accept that we're just playing a role, and we don't need to justify. We don't need to be fearful of the authority that's happening. See, you being called out, or it sounded like it was in front of people as well. And so that brings a whole other level of um, self judgment in, so to say. So I think that played a big role. So, see, practicing putting ourselves in situations where we're going to get judged and learn not to take that hit on is what needs to be practiced here. And this is where family can be very useful. And I know we're going to get into some family stuff as well. But see, many times families, uh, that it's no holds barred. They will attack or give a judgment like very quickly. And this is where I say that family can be so useful to practice not taking on other people's judgments, of taking it on ourselves, because that's part of that heaviness that we carry in our chest. So practicing that, being grounded, like you said, you felt like you were grounded. But see, anytime we feel judged, that can knock us off of being grounded right away, because it sends us up the energy up to the mind to try to sort out justification and all these kinds of processing, rather than just going, oh, they're emotionally charged, and I just stepped into playing a role, and they just directed that at me, but that has very, very little, if anything, to do with me. And so, see, not taking it on is the biggest step. Once you take it on and you recognize that, then finding a way to release it is the next step. So, remembering the 5 pillars, that, the first one, everything's in divine order. So, as soon as you catch yourself playing a role, oh, this is in divine order here, but I don't have to take this on. I'm just going to clarify my role internally, more importantly than externally.
Yeah, you kind of answered the next question that I had when you were explaining like how I took on that blow of energy, kind of like it was like a sword, and I didn't have any defense there. I kind of in my mind thought about, okay, well, I think the point is to like almost like move with the energy, like Tai Chi. You're kind of like moving so you don't absorb it, but you kind of like deflect it. So the whole point of all this work is to stop the ripple. I essentially did that, but I'm paying the cost of how I did that.
Right.
And so I guess my question was, and you kind of answered it, is I guess there's like a perspective that I should have or could have had, or should have, could have, that next time that I can take on that could help with that. And then we just went in and explained it, how you explained how when I went into I mean, it was actually like a lot of embarrassment too.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so, and that's actually an emotion that I haven't really made friends with yet.
Good
That
to
I
say.
don't
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of firsthand experience playing with that emotion, because I think other ones mask that. You
Mhm.
know, other ones come first, like the judgment and stuff like that. So embarrassment, I can feel into that now a little bit. It wasn't too bad. I feel like years ago would have been way worse. I would have had so much embarrassment, but
Sure.
I knew that this was a misunderstanding. But there was still a little bit there. I'm not denying that.
Mhm.
But how you described, how I could have been grounded, but once any of that emotion came up, all my energy went up to my mental to try to
Mhm.
figure it out. That is exactly what happened.
Yeah.
That visual is like perfect. You've never explained it that way, but that is exactly how it feels, and how you would explain to somebody to stay in that grounded, like keep your energy down. And if you have that perspective, if you're able to pause when this is happening, and you bring in that, hey, I'm just playing a role here. You're still in consciousness and you're still grounded. So you still have a choice. But once you allow that energy
Yeah.
to shoot up to the mental, I mean, you probably still have some chances as the energy is fluttering around to make the right decision and maybe try to pull back down. But you probably got to take a few breaths and maybe walk away for a second. But once it gets up there and then you lose consciousness and you don't make that decision to get it back, then yeah, then you're in an emotional reaction.
And see, the emotional reactions are created in the mental state. So that's the issue with the energy shooting up to the mental state to try to have the solution rather than realizing, oh, there's no solution here because I'm not actually being attacked. This is just where this person's at. And see, that's a grounded energy in the way that they're going to look at it. And the other point that I feel like is important here, and I want to be very clear and concise in how I'm explaining this, is when we go to be playful and kind of carefree, see, that's where we're more vulnerable for an attack. So, see, I want everybody to be playful and childlike. All the great teachers has talked about being childlike, and it took me a long time to understand what that meant, but it's still like being childlike with a parent supervision, and your higher self is still looking over to manage all this, because that's where people get caught off guard. And so you said that you were being yourself, you were joking, you were kind of like being playful about it, and see, there's nothing wrong with that, but it makes us more vulnerable to attacks, so to say, emotional attacks. And so realizing that one or the other needs to happen, that in that childlike part of being childlike is that you accept that people are going to have judgments. And if they do, because see, everybody don't like the child being free and playful and blah 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 all the time. If somebody's in a serious mood, then see, they're not going to be necessarily happy with that. So the wise person works at this to always be aware, is this the optimal time, the optimal place, the optimal person, the optimal subject, or the optimal duration? And because you could have shifted out of that role to be the announcer, hey, I'm gonna be a little bit more serious here, make sure everything is so blah blah blah. But see, you did that to a certain extent, still wanting to be playful. And so I'm not saying you did anything wrong, but just realizing when you take a role of authority, then people are a certain amount of people is looking to resonate with that authority, and then certain people are looking to attack that authority. So that would be just something that I would throw in there, that be aware, and the grounded and wise person is aware of when they're shifting roles, so to say. Shift into a role being more serious, being the spotlight, and then shift right back into being more playful after you step out of that role is something that, can be useful to practice as well.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I think we've talked about this on one episode, and I remember bringing in, like, the example of, like, a woman just dancing and not caring about what other where other people are, and just, like, she's she could say that, "I'm in my inner child, I'm wild and free, and, this is me, I'm being myself," and then she's, like, bumping into people, and so, yeah, it's I mean, you're not balanced because consciousness is all in one.
Right.
You're balanced, you're playful, but you're also serious, but you're also, you're all the things, and you're always making the choice on which one you need at what particular
Yes, and
time. So I totally get that.
I think that's a great point to piggyback on. That, yeah, we're not saying that lady or girl should be restricted to dance and be spontaneous and like that, childlike, but maybe on a private property where there's not other people around, or there's just a few people. In that scenario, if she's in public where there's hundreds of people around, then, maybe manage that, still be free, but be considerate of those that are around, or say, you know what, I just don't want to be considerate right now. So I'm going to remove myself. I'm going to go get away from people, and then I'm going to have this experience. So here we talk about often on the podcast for the overall good of everyone involved. And if you see that you're doing, or you've got this urge to do something that may offend or bother other people around, then simply remove yourself from that situation any way that you can and go have that experience. Or just recognize that maybe you're at a work situation and you can't get away at that moment, and just say, man, when I get home, I'm going to let this child out to play. But for right now, I'm going to, stay grounded and stay centered and take care of what I need to. And the main thing is people making time for these types of releases. And see, I work every day to make sure that I have that playful time and that I have serious time, and that my personality doesn't get confused, that either it should always be playful or that it should always be serious. Hopefully the training over time is that, no, we're going to visit both very frequently. So anytime we're in a situation where we need to be more serious or more professional, we're not suppressing anything. It's just like wearing clothes on a sunny day or wearing clothes on a wintry day. It's we're still naked underneath. We're still who we really are, but we're wearing the clothes for protection. And that's the way that I see we need to be childlike, but we also need to be considerate of those that are around. And this over time helps us learn to trust ourselves more. And when we trust ourselves more, we are able to see the roles that we're playing sooner, and we don't need to defend when somebody does attack with a judgment.
Yeah, and just to wrap up this experience, I do feel that this was a how do I say this? Community I can't even say this word. A combination of things over time that resulted in this, because I do feel like all of the other events leading up to this, I did a decent job at staying grounded.
Mhm.
And had those not happened, maybe I would have been able to handle this a little differently. But because those kind of, well, okay, I feel like I did a decent job, but they did take a toll, because it was like so many different hits, and I was kind of like dodging them, and I felt like I was doing a good job at managing all of them, but I was taking it on a little bit, and I think it just got to a point where this scenario was like this much, and I only had this much room, and
Right.
so that's why the energy shot up, and so I wasn't fresh going into that. If I was, then I could have maybe handled it differently. I probably would have had more energy to stay grounded, maybe.
Yes, and
I don't know,
another
just a
another
theory.
point here too is not that you did anything wrong, and that's what I want the listeners to hear, is that all of this is a process. And I just really appreciate you sharing like this little story, because I think a lot of people can relate with it. And see, it's not about whether you succeeded or failed, it's about what you learned, and learning that, okay, I can handle this individually really well, and I'm proud of myself where that's being handled. But then when I get put on stage or the spotlight gets put on me and there's tons of people around, oh, I have to remember I'm more vulnerable in those situations. Judgments are going to hit much deeper because it's not just a one-on-one. Now it's in front of 40 or 50 people. And so now the practice is that anytime that opportunity comes up again, that you take advantage of that and you say, no, give me the microphone. I want to speak in front of people and I want to be more present. And I want to set my little child down just for a moment and say, okay, I got the spotlight on me. So I'm going to do everything so-called by the book and very clear. And then when I hand the mic back, I'm going to go back into that more childlike playfulness. And eventually you'll get to where you can bring more of that childlike playfulness on the in the spotlight. But see, this is a practice. You want to work towards that. And I think that played a big role, is the fact that you were called out in front of other people, and that wasn't what you were prepared for. That wasn't even what maybe you were aware of or looking for. So once again, this is a great opportunity to now, that's in your tool belt, to just realize, okay, people with authority have always got to deal with other people looking to cast judgment. And so anytime you step into any kind of spotlight, to be prepared for that. You can be childlike if you want, but just learn to that it's a possibility to be attacked here. And I like to share, being a public figure, that there's a lot of people looking to resonate with what I say, but there's also a lot of people that's looking to tear it down as quickly as possible as well. So over time, it's helped me to, I don't want to say expect that challenge, but the second pillar is the law of polarity. And what that simply means, that if you get one thing, you've got to experience the other. So this is the thing about being in any type of spotlight. You're going to get some people that resonate and then some people that challenge. And I think that that's a great lesson and opportunity for you to learn and grow moving forward.
There's actually one more thing that I want to bring up, because I had mentioned this to you in like a voice message when it first happened, and we kind of agreed to not discuss it too much and to bring it on the podcast. But I remember you had mentioned something that I was curious about. You had mentioned something about playing the mediator role and how that can, I don't know if backfire is the right word, or you're still involved in playing a role. So is there something to that? Is there a cost that I'm not aware of in playing that mediator role? Because to me, it's like, I'm not, like, you have these two forces that are against each other, and I'm just here, and I'm just kind of like, okay, well, you could see this guy's point, and to this guy, you could see this guy's point, and like, let's all be friends, and to try to, bring their levels down. And I know sometimes it can turn on you, but that didn't happen in this scenario. But like, where do I have a blind spot in that?
Now, I think this is a great point to bring up, because a lot of people get caught in being the mediator, whether they choose to or not. And normally each family has somebody that plays this role. The issue is, when we don't get the result that we were hoping for, then we judge ourselves subtly as a failure. So see, we want to feel good about being helpful in that situation, but if we're not able to be helpful and there's still friction after getting involved, then see, an emotional empath person can take that on because they can feel disappointed in themselves. So here's the key in that. If you're going to play the mediator role, do your best to not be approaching it from the fix it standpoint. I'm just going to attempt to assist here, but see, the two parties have to agree to stop attacking. The two parties have to be willing to see the other's point of view. And in every situation, one or both of those parties may or may not be willing to look at that other view. The mediator, see, can only be successful typically if they're able to say it in a way that one or the other person can receive it, that they weren't receiving it from the original conversation. So the mediator's role, to summarize this, is to attempt to bring more clarity to the situation, but not to fix it, and to get in and out of that situation as quickly as possible. Because if these people show that they're not receptive to being redirected, because that's what the mediator is attempting to do, is redirect the mental perception of what is happening here. And that should be able to be seen, if it's going to happen, literally within 15 to 30 seconds. Because people that are emotionally aggravated or charged, see, they do not want to see somebody else's view. They typically only want to defend their view. And a mediator isn't going to help that person. So I think that's the key, is in being the mediator, you're attempting to help, you're looking to get in and out quickly, and you're determining that time by how well received your redirection of the verbiage is being received. And if it's not, like within 30 to 45 seconds, then hey, let's pull this. I'm not going to play this role. These people just need to work this out. My job is to make sure that I'm managing my energy, and that my energy is grounded and centered no matter what's going on over here beside me.
Yeah, I felt like when I played that role for my buddy, he was mad at that guy for saying that that kid couldn't cross that line, and then he calling him out on him, touching up his ball with the sanding pad, and so I had that moment where I was trying to like redirect it or get him to see the other side, and I could see that he just kept coming back to, oh well, he's doing something wrong, and then so it was just like, no, you're right, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. He shouldn't normally he couldn't do that, but because we're in a non-sanctioned league, he can do that. And so, yes, maybe the kid who crossed the line, maybe he was wrong, maybe he was right. We don't know, but it's a non-sanctioned league. It's not a big deal. We're going to move on from this. And I just wanted him to know that I'm not energetically, like I'm not on his side like I'm not in his corner, you know, fanning his flames, that I'm like neutral here. I tried to bring the opposite perspective. His energy just kept going back to that guy was wrong,
Mm-hmm.
and I just let it be, but I didn't fan his flames, and I think that helped the situation, because I could have kept kept poking the bear
Sure.
and got him fired up, and maybe he would have bowled better, maybe he would have bowled worse. I don't know. Tonight we're going for the first half championship, so I may
Mm-hmm.
I may have to play that card to get a little more out of him. I don't know.
Yeah, and again,
Just
here
caution right now, but
is challenging for the mediator when the rules aren't clear. So see, this is why it can be very challenging for a person of your type, because you can see both sides. And hey, yes, that is a rule, but we don't take that rule that serious. I mean, it's like when we play disc golf, frisbee disc golf. Every course has out of bounds, but me and the friends that I play with, we choose not to play out of bounds unless we call it before a match is beginning. And so if somebody from the outside comes in and plays with us, and they're used to playing without a bounds, then see, there's going to be friction there. So that is part of the point of getting clear of, like, okay, what of these rules are we going to adhere to, and what are these rules we're not going to. And many professional sports, that's why it's more black and white of, no, this is a rule and we go by this. But we see it even in professional sports with referees and umpires, that they bend things here and there, and that's just part of sports. But be careful playing the mediator when you can see both sides equally, because then you're just looking to hope that the two people that have the conflict are willing to see each other's sides, and then somebody's going to have to give in. Either the person that, okay, will take that spare away because I didn't think that we follow that rule, but now you're saying that we do. So again, it's a very gray area, but there's a lot of gray areas out there in life, day in and day out. And the main topic of this podcast today is how to manage our energy in these different situations. So a mediator can be very useful when the rules are clear and you're just trying to get that across. But when you can see both sides, then you're just depending on somebody giving in. And if those are two willful people, they're not going to, neither one's going to give in. And the mediator many times is going to take on the energy of that situation.
Yeah. And just to put the cherry on the top, I am like the president of the league. So I'm in, I don't want to say a place of authority, but like I play the role of helping to figure these things out.
Okay.
And communicating to these people as well. So there was that level, and that's why I took on that kind of, oh, is that a rule? Let me go talk to the people who may know, who've been there longer than me, because I don't know how they do their non-sanctioned leagues, but I'm like the guy that people would go to figure, to try to figure those things out. So there was that aspect as well. But anyway, my whole goal there of that mediating situation was to just move on and then say like, hey, it was all a misunderstanding. Here's the clarity. Nobody's wrong here, really.
Right.
And that's big for me, because usually I'm trying to judge, because I'm big on rules and laws and all that. And I'm kind of moving to, just find a place of acceptance as quickly as possible and efficiently as possible, and then move on, because there's no point on staying upset.
Yeah, but see,
It's just
people
gonna ruin everybody's night.
Yeah, people that aren't energetically aware or sensitive or care about that stuff, see, they want to dig their heels in and they want to just prove that they're right. And so, again, we can't fix somebody like that, and that's what playing that mediator role is very important. And so, this might be, useful, just a learning opportunity for you to get clear and start making lists of, okay, these are rules that we're going to follow, and these we're not going to follow so much, where everybody's aware of that. But it does put a person in a challenging situation where there are rules, and then there are rules that are being chosen to utilize and to not utilize. But see, going back to disc golf, I don't do any kind of tournaments or anything like that. I only do it for pleasure. So if I played with somebody that did do tournaments all the time, then I would probably adjust my game and play, with the rules of out of bounds and that type of thing. But again, most people that are looking to adapt and looking to stop the friction, they're not looking to be right all the time. And we're still in a society where most people are looking to be right. And that's why playing a mediator role in this day and age is very challenging, and especially for people with the emotions not activated that can just absorb that. But I think you did a good job overall with this. But it did give you a lot of information to build off of moving forward.
Yeah, and I can't believe how long this one story went. I have many more that we'll probably have to do a follow-up and try to cover them all. But anyway, I appreciate everybody joining in and listening to us chat more casually. I think we're going to work on getting more and more and more casually. It's going to be a process because we're new at this. But I appreciate everybody joining in, and we'll see you on the next one.
Yeah, much love, everybody.
Thank you for listening to this free version of the Wise podcast. To hear the complete conversation and go deeper into the application of the tools and techniques of the Just Philosophy, head on over to wisewisepodcast.com and become a premium member. You'll get to hear all of our complete conversations, including the complete episodes of our Inward Journey story series and our entire back catalog, and continue your self-development journey with us. We honor your dedication to self-growth, overall wellness, and continuing to ask the wise whys.
And remember, gradual changes over long periods of time equals lasting results.
Continue on your self-growth journey by visiting thejustphilosophy.com, where you are able to connect personally by booking a private consultation with Alexander in person, by phone, or Zoom. Uncover your authentic self more easily with a human design or destiny card consultation. Here you will gain information about your energetic makeup, personality, and your higher self, as well as navigating your way through your relationships. There are also multiple types of reports available for purchase that help you gain insight into your career, relationships, and opportunities for self-growth. The site also allows you to view a calendar of Alexander's live performances and class schedule, peruse other products such as shirts, CDs, and finally, the revolutionary VibroTune vibrational sound therapy tables. These contoured therapy tables allow you to bathe in a vibrational sonic bath of frequencies, bringing you into alignment on all levels. You will be feeling and hearing calming music synced through vibration and frequency. So again, you can grab all this goodness at thejustphilosophy.com, thejustphilosophy.com. The Just Philosophy, as discussed in this podcast, has been developed by Alexander over the last 25 years in his personal studies, private practice, and professional environment. The information discussed is intended for educational purposes only and is not meant as a replacement for conventional medicine. Just remember, knowledge plus experience equals wisdom. Seek the wise. We want to thank you for working on you. Keep shining your light and refining your vibe.